being able to play by ear or figure out songs on guitar by ear is something that I know all players want to be able to do. And I think that early on, some of us may make the mistake of believing that playing by ear is just an absurd talent that some people are born with and that others aren't. And that if you weren't born with it, you will just never be able to play by ear. I think that's completely wrong. Playing by ear is a learned skill that requires a lot of practice, just like anything else does. So through the remainder of this video, what I'll be doing is talking through a lot of my thoughts and ideas, hopefully giving you an approach to refining your ear in a way that it can become an asset to your playing. I want us to start this video with you doing a self-assessment so that I can show you a skill that I suspect you already have, but maybe you just don't even realize it yet. What I want for you to focus on is focus on the shape of my chords and focus on the movement of the chords that my hands will be making. Visually be focusing on it. Obviously be listening as well, but I'm wanting for you to really zero in on this aspect of watching the chords as they're being made. And at one point, and while I'm doing this, the sound will actually drop out, and that is intentional, and then I'll make a point about that a little bit later on. But so right now, you're watching my chord shapes as they happen. Okay, let's try a different chord progression. Different set of chords, do the same thing, be watching and listening as I'm playing this. Okay, so if your mind did as I suspect it did and filled in some sort of an audible understanding of a G whenever I went to this G but the sound dropped out, or the A minor whenever you watched me go to the A minor but the sound dropped out, then I think that you're a lot closer to being able to play songs and figure out songs by ear than you realize you are. And I'll explain why that is, or why I think that is, a little bit later in the video. The first key step to all this, I think, is to become an active listener of music. Far too often, whenever we're in our cars just listening to music, I think that we allow that music to be an inactive wash of sound that just comes over us, that we're disengaged from. And as musicians, as instrumentalists, if we're wanting to figure out a song, we can't listen to music that way. We can't allow music to be this disengaged reception of noise that's coming at us from speakers. So the first step that I would suggest that we take in enhancing our ear and being an active listener is to just figure out what instrumentation is taking place in the song. Is it a mandolin and a bass, or a mandolin, a bass, and a guitar? Are there 5 instrumentalists that are playing in this song? Figure out what it is that is actually taking place in the song. So that you can know what you're wanting to learn. Imagine for a second that you and a group of friends are trying to figure out a place to go eat dinner. I think that we have a tendency to make a list of, what are my options? Where do I want to go eat? And then you narrow it down to, I want to go eat at this place, after setting aside every place that you're not wanting to eat. With music, I feel like it's almost the exact same process. You need to know what your options are inside the song of what you're wanting to learn, and then isolate the one that you're actually wanting to focus on and figure out a way to, in your mind, kind of remove all the other distractants from the shelf. The next thing that I would do, or that I find myself doing whenever I'm listening to music and trying to figure it out, is I actually picture myself with the guitar in my hands, playing along with it. And this is while I'm riding down the road in a car. I mean, nobody's going to be playing guitar while they drive, or at least I hope they don't, because that's really dangerous. So I imagine myself with the guitar in my hands, and I ask myself, okay, so the song that I'm listening to, what are my hands doing? Are my hands going up the fretboard? Am I hearing an ascending guitar part, or are my hands going down the fretboard? Am I hearing a descending guitar part or guitar melody? And I actually will envision myself just sitting somewhere that I usually play guitar, like in this chair right here, strumming along with it. In the same way that a golfer, before he hits a tee shot, is going to step back behind that golf ball and visualize a certain ball flight, taking a certain trajectory to a certain area of the course. Or in the same way that whenever he gets on the green before he putts, he's going to get down on eye level with that ball and focus intensely on, every break of the green and slope of the green before he then gets back up and executes a shot. I think that we need to be able to do the same thing as listeners and players of music. There needs to be a really kind of intimate connection that takes place with what we're hearing and what we're visualizing in our minds. There needs to be some sort of a connected expectation between our ears, the pictures or images that we're seeing in our mind, and then our ability to recreate those through our hands on an instrument. So let me get to the self-assessment that we did at the beginning of the video. Here's the point that I'm wanting to make about that. If you were able to fill in the sound of a G chord or the sound of an A minor chord, as you saw my fingers doing that, then you already have a connected expectation for what the visual sight of chords mean. I just used this term a second ago of having a connected visual or audible expectation whenever we're playing music. You've already got that in your mind, even if you don't realize that you have it. Whenever you saw me go to this G chord, your brain filled it in with the G chord. Whenever you saw me go to this A minor chord, your brain probably filled it in, or hopefully filled it in, with an A minor chord, because you've already set that expectation that this shape has a certain sound, this shape has a certain sound. And if you've got that part in your brain, I think that you're close to being able to play by ear through kind of a reverse engineering almost. Whenever I'm playing, or whenever I'm trying to figure out something to play, and I'm, just listening to it, I'll find myself, even if it's a song that I've never even heard before, I'll find myself playing along in the song. I'll find one or two chords that I am certain of. And then whenever it gets to that part of the song, if it's a D chord, then in my brain, I'm making a D chord with it. And then whenever it goes to the next sound, I think, what does it sound like my fingers just did? Did it just go to an E minor? And I'll move in my brain to an E minor and see like this big picture of an E minor chord chart, and basically compare the sound that my brain knows an E minor has with the sound that I'm hearing on the radio, and figure out, was that the right move to make? And if not, then I'll rewind the song back to the part that I know is a D and try a different chord, until in my mind I've got what I know these chords sound like matching up with the way that the song is sounding. And this could take a lot of practice to be able to get right, but again, being able to visualize our expectations for song, I think could be a healthy step for you to be taking in practicing and cultivating your ear in a way that is an asset for you. So how do I know what some of the chords sound like? I imagine that everyone is different, but there are a couple of chords that stand out to me that I just, for some reason, they're recognizable to me. And an E chord, whenever I hear that in a song, for some reason, I just know it's an E chord. Maybe it's because there's this bassy and trebly resonance that's droning through the entire chord. Those notes stick out to me for some reason. If I hear an E, or this E chord, I usually realize, oh, that's an E chord. And then I can start, by process of elimination, piecing together other chords in my mind that I know would go with an E major chord. Like, surely there's going to be a B involved, or a C sharp minor involved, or an A involved at some point. So if you can pinpoint one of the chords, you're going to be well ahead of the game in being able to, by ear, figure out the rest of the stuff. Another one that stands out to me for some reason is a drop D. A drop D chord just always stands out to me. If I hear that sound, I've been able to realize just immediately, oh my God, that's drop D. I know where to start now. So I suspect that you have got certain chords that stand out to you in songs as well, that even if you haven't thought about it actively yet, if you start to actively listen to music, you're going to recognize these sounds as being a D chord or an E chord. And then as you listen further, you're going to be able to start piecing them together in a way that you can figure out songs. Can you figure out songs by ear through just hunting and pecking on a guitar? Absolutely so. And sometimes that might be the most effective way to get it done in a hurry. Meaning that you get your guitar, you hit play on Spotify on the song that you want to learn, then you just start going up the fretboard, figuring out the key of the song, then you start to hunt and peck for the chords that go with it. Sure, you can do that. But here's the problem that presents, or at least that I've seen that present for some players, even experienced players, is that once you find the key, let's assume that you strike this lowest E note and realize, oh my God, the key of the song is in E, and then you start playing standard E chords, and then you realize the second chord is an A, and you're playing the song like this. Well, yeah, those are the same notes that are being played on the album. There's a chance that it's not actually these voicings, that it's not actually these shapes that are taking place. And that's, for me, why it's so important to be able to cultivate your ear in such a way that you are, whenever you hear these sounds, you get to the point that just without even thinking about it, you're associating a certain chord shape with them. For instance, these chords right here can be played a ton of different ways. They can be played this way, they can be played that way. You can capo on the second fret and play in D. And this is the biggest thing that I'm talking about, is that whenever you hear something that's in the key of E, ideally you want to be able to recognize it as happening in the, if it's happening in a D shape, you need to be able to recognize that and be able to hear, okay, so this lowest E is matching up with what's happening, but there's a lot of treble that's happening in that first chord. Maybe I don't need to play the chord the way that I was taught as a standard E. Maybe that's not how it's being played. Maybe I should search for other ways to play an E, like capoing on the second fret and playing in this D formation. And if that is the correct formation, obviously it's going to, align properly and fit with itself. Kind of like, kids that play with, you've seen those toys where they shove shapes into the shape holes. And sometimes you get kids that they realize that they've got the right piece, but it's not going into the right, or it's not going into the hole the way that it should, because they don't have it aligned correctly. As an active listener, you need to figure out how to properly align those chords. You may have figured out the chords properly and that the chords are an E and an A, but then whenever you play along with it, you realize that what you're doing doesn't quite match up with what you're hearing on the recording. So you need to figure out a way to shift that shape just a little bit so that it properly lays over the way that it should. And that could mean, realizing that it's being played in a D formation for G, or you could also be playing in a C formation for the key of E. So anyway, all of these are skills that I think that you can enhance simply through making a concerted effort to listen intensely to the music and then start to just visualize. And I know that sounds hokey, and it's certainly not as easy as I'm making it sound, but I think that it is beneficial to figure out a way to make it work for you. Begin to visualize these chords as you hear them being played.